So, so can you get your vagus nerve back? I mean, yeah, definitely, for sure. But in my own life, I can say from my own example that I wouldn't have done the work I did to get mine back if I basically hadn't had it forced on me by life. I would never have chosen to face the amount of pain that I faced just going into my own body unless I had no other option. So I'm just putting that out there. It's not something that I would expect most people to choose to do voluntarily. But we'll talk about it anyway. So the first point is that the nervous system is not a fixed entity. There's stuff dying and stuff growing constantly in the nervous system. Maybe on the order of about 200,000 neurons a day. So what you don't use dies. What you do use grows. Okay? So if you think of a pianist, right? When anybody started, piano lessons when they're a kid, you're clumsy at first. You can't do stuff with the left hand and the right hand separately. But over time, every day you practice, you do more and more complicated exercises, and you eventually grow the nerves to be able to do it. This is a growth cone of a neuron. It's one of my favorite pictures. So the point is, we have the physical ability to regrow nerves, to reclaim territory that we haven't inhabited. The flip side of that is if you haven't been here for a long time, it has atrophied. No question about it. I mean, when I sort of burst back into my own viscera, it took months for stuff to really regrow. And I could feel it regrowing. And it was intense, but you can grow it back. And it grows pretty rapidly. But again, it depends on constantly using it. If you were going to do the work of going back into your belly, you would be facing a lot of stuff that's sort of arrayed against you. And one thing is your own self. I mean, let's say you have a bunch of inner children, right? These sort of parts of you that are here. They're smarter and stronger than you. They're infused with all kinds of visceral strength, right? They actually have visceral parts of your nervous system wrapped around them. So they have armor, they have power, they have intelligence that you don't have. They're smarter than you. They can outwit you. You won't even know that they're outwitting you. You might be listening to some dumb guy talk about this and be thinking, well, he's just stupid and bald. Who knows? He's, I'll ignore him. But that's the kind of crap they feed you to deceive you into doing what their agenda is, which is usually something bad that your parents did to you or somebody else did to you. So it's a major thing to be fighting your own self going here. And it's sometimes overwhelming because you're not even aware of it. But on top of that, you got friends and family and co-workers and your entire culture, your doctors and also every practical and financial consideration in your life sort of arrayed against you. So there's a lot of stuff preventing you from doing any major life-changing work, or even going into discomfort and becoming more crazy. Who wants that? Who wants their mom to be more crazy, Who wants their kid to be more crazy? It's uncomfortable. Nobody who doesn't want to feel this is excited or happy to see somebody else get more crazy because it makes them feel, uh-oh, I'm actually crazy, even if that's unconscious. I get excited when people have difficulty because I know where it leads, but my son has a real problem with that. When he's, expressing some displeasure at something or something bad happened at school or whatever, and I get psyched for him because I know that can lead to growth. He's like, what's wrong with you? Why are you happy that I'm unhappy? But anyway, so there's stuff in your way. Just a quick story. My grandmother and grandfather came to me one time and told me the story about my uncle, my great uncle, Amadeo, who had a heart attack. Not a major one, minor one. Had a heart attack, and he kind of woke him up. He's like, what the hell am I doing with my life? He was about 65 years old. And the next day, or maybe a week later, something like that, he decided he really had to go to Florida. And this was his dream, and he wanted to go to Florida. So he went to Florida. And my grandparents are telling me, isn't that terrible that he wouldn't consider our feelings being worried about him going to Florida after his heart attack? And at the time, I was in college, and I was like, what's wrong with you guys? He's like, he woke up from a heart attack and realized he had to go to Florida, and he went to Florida. Get behind the guy. Anyway, your family may oppose your health. But it's certainly your country will. Okay. So, but who's on your side? A few few things. First of all, your nervous system wants to be whole. You know, it's very uncomfortable and very demanding to keep it. I mean, think about how much stuff, certainly for me, I had to use lots of things and lots of energy keeping myself disconnected and not feeling in my belly and my heart. I had to, you know, go to the store and buy ice cream or whatever it was, and, you know, invest all this time arguing with people on the phone or whatever I did to distract myself from much stronger, deeper feelings that I was having. But all those things I was using to distract myself took energy, a lot of energy. The nervous system wants to be hooked up and really full and whole. It just can be painful, you know. You know how a river meets the ocean? And when the river meets the ocean, it's really turbulent. You know, so if you're on a canoe going down a river and you come to the delta and you're going out to the ocean, you got to cross all that choppy stuff. You know, it's kind of like that. If you want to go from the river back into the ocean, you got to cross the choppy stuff. Or, you know, when the space shuttle would come back from being in orbit, you're coming through the atmosphere, it starts shaking and catching on fire, and tiles are flying off, and it's, you know, it's a pretty major thing. It's, you know, burning you up, and that's kind of how it feels. Certainly how it felt to me. But what's on your side? I don't want it to be too sappy here. These are things that I find. But I feel like everybody's secretly hoping and secretly wanting to be as whole as possible, as real as possible, having life feel as intense and as good and as connected as possible. And so everybody's secretly wishing for somebody else to do this work, you know, so they can have a little more permission to do it. So everybody's really kind of hoping that you'll do it. And I felt personally, when I was, after I'd done this work and I was starting to study yoga, and I would practice every day on the beach, facing east, at dawn, and I would feel, and it could have been complete hallucinations, but I would feel that there were spirits coming over from India, sort of hovering over me and teaching me how to do stuff, and kind of, whatever. I'm not saying that was an actual reality, but it certainly felt like there were spirits that were sort of beckoning me to a deeper living, you know, a stronger living, even if it meant me crossing through some pain. So there's stuff on your side. Yeah. A brief sort of treasure map of what it looks like to actually do the work step by step. I realize that illustration doesn't tell you anything, but it's just a treasure map I found on Google. First of all, expect to fail many, many times. You know, I certainly, you know, I would try to get off sugar or off of food, and I could do it for 2 days, but then I couldn't do it. You know, and then I would fall off the wagon. You know, certainly it took me many tries. But it's kind of like you're facing this way, and what you see is a nice desert with a few little shrubby little plants, and you think that's life. You know, that's how it felt to me. Like, that's life. There's nothing else. What more could there be? But behind you, there's a Garden of Eden, like verdant and incredibly wonderful smells and sights and feelings. But around that garden, there's a moat filled with lava. But you're not even aware of any of it. You might slightly feel a little heat on your back. But doing the work is kind of like turning around, facing the lava, walking toward it into the heat, diving into the lava, having it burn all the flesh off your body, and then crawling up on the other side and letting the garden heal you and rebuild your flesh. That's basically how it felt to me. No. Yeah, it is. Well, but it doesn't really do that. It just feels like it's okay. But there are basically 7 steps, I think, for me anyway, roughly. First, you're living in your head, and you're not even aware of anything in your body. You know, I had a shrink when I was about 20 that was said, you know, what about your pain, Rolf? And I was like, what pain? There's no pain. It wasn't until 15 years later that I started feeling a little bit of what he was talking about. So first you're in your head and blissfully ignorant of anything else in the body. Then you start to get hints of more stuff and become fearful. It's scary. It's very scary to feel that there's more stuff that you've been totally unaware of your whole life. So you're living in fear for a long time. I certainly was. Eventually, maybe do the work, which we're going to talk about what the work actually is. You do the work and then you fall into your pain. And you have pain that really wakes up your body. And that's just the price of admission. That's just what it costs to get your nervous system back. point is not to feel pain, the point is to feel joy and connectedness to everything. And to feel alive fully. But you have to go through the pain stage to get there, because that's why you disconnected from your nervous system to begin with. If you didn't have to, you wouldn't be disconnected, right? So you get your body back. You can weep, you can laugh, you can smell, you can feel. You know, you're hooked up again. And that gives you a real self, a whole self now. If you think about your nervous system, right? It's one thing. It's not a brain with some extra nerves. It's just one thing. You know, like a squid in your body. It's got tendrils, it's got a clump here, it's got a clump here. But it's just one thing. And you get your whole self back. I think everything that we think of as selfhood, right? Even stuff we talk about like our spirits. These are functions of our nervous system. They kind of have to be. You can't perceive anything without them, right? So any thought you could possibly have is coming from the nervous system. The nervous system is supposed to be a whole thing, not just a clump and a bunch of dead stuff. So you get your real self back, and that makes it possible to start to make real choices, you know, instead of head choices. And so you start making real choices and living your real choices, which becomes kind of a spiritual work. You know, for me, I chose to teach yoga, and I chose to make music, and I chose to build green buildings. And I've been doing that for the past 12 years or so. And it's not easy. It's not like all of a sudden life becomes just a bag of strawberries. It's tough. And you're constantly blowing it and, you know, changing what you do and refining and adjusting. But it feels like they're my choices. You know, it feels like my work. And it feels like that with all of me, not just my head battling my body, right? And that starts to feel like you have your soul back. And ultimately, what it feels like to me is, you know, I'm here to love in some fashion, in some way. And lots of people say that, you know. So you go from head to love through the body. That's kind of how I see it.